Hi, Seema.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This is part of a series around Tamara Leisure Experiences is holding. It's a series of discussions called Tamara Perspectives, where we try to bring leaders from across industries and from nonprofit and across the space of ecology and environment, really, to talk about their work, to share learnings, to share knowledge so that all of us can do better as we move forward on this planet. Thank you so much for coming to this session. Seema, of course, you are faculty at Azim Premji University, and you work in building relationships between nature and society within the urban and city space. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and the work that you do?
Thank you so much, Shruti, and it's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you for inviting me for this. As you said, I am a faculty at the university, and I teach in the undergraduate program there in the Environmental Science and Sustainability. I'm also a part of the Center for Climate Change and Sustainability, where our research is focused around sustainability challenges and climate change, but making data and information which is more accessible to people, because there's so much data and science out there. But how do we make all that easily accessible? So our research, which is done by a team of us, looks at data crunching, but converting the data into understandable form. Also on public outreach and engagement through climate festivals that we hold every year, through our writing, through popular books for children, and also getting in as many children and the local community that we can from Bangalore and around Sarjapur to be a part of our initiatives.
This series is titled The Land and the Living, and it's in line with the theme for World Environment Day, which is land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. This theme addresses both the need of the hour, which is to survive, as well as to revive our planet as it is today. People, of course, are essential to both of these things, and so having worked at the nexus of both environmentalism as well as urban culture, how do you see people becoming both change agents as well as benefactors towards creating a greener future?
Wherever we have, in our work, we have seen in our research is that the most amount of change that has been brought about has been because of citizen action. So as a part of our book, which I was mentioning a little while ago, Shades of Blue, we had interviewed environmental warriors from across the country. And what we found is that they are so dedicated in the face of so many obstacles when it comes to either saving a water body, saving a forest, or even a single tree. Even a small patch of nature is worth for them to protect. And they are persistent, they are very dedicated. And in the face of all that you see around, it's easy to go into the sense of doom and gloom, thinking that nothing really is happening. But when we interviewed these people, we found that they have leveraged whatever skills, whatever they could, in trying to protect a particular space. It could be from sending a postcard, it could be holding a protest, it could be interacting with the local community, say the fisher folk in the Mulla Mutta River to protect the water body. So it is they who have given us a lot of hope. That is not to say that there are no government or other individuals who don't do it, because we've also found that there are interested government officials who just don't know about how to go about it, because sometimes the thinking becomes so conditioned in a particular way, and they have approached us and can you help us with a particular maybe it could be environmental awareness programs that they want to conduct, and we've been able to happy to help. So we found that while it is easy to fall into being a cynic and being very cynical, it's the work of these water warriors or these environmental stewards across India that have really shown us that even if it is just protecting a park or protecting just a small amount of lake, the spillover benefits are so much more. Yes, you protect the urban ecosystems, but it brings the community together. It has offshoots of other things. A lake protection exercise can become like a solid waste management, a group of protect solid waste management comes to. So there's a lot of these spillover benefits that we have seen, and that kind of builds the community. And Bangalore is a perfect place, because Bangalore civic action is something which seems in the genetic material of Bangaloreans. They're always ready to come out and protect an avenue of trees that is being felled, or a lake that is being encroached or protected. So for us, it boils down to the people on the street who have the eyes on the street to help with any kind of environmental change.
That's really wonderful. I thought, I was reading through your bio, and one of the things that I found was really interesting was this idea that you were looking at how urban infrastructure could actually be used to create nature solutions. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I find that we usually think about nature solutions being, you have to protect nature. Whatever nature is there, okay, it's getting smaller and smaller. We have to protect it at no cost. But I think when you're talking about, urbanization, inevitably there is this sort of, concretization of cities and things like that is happening. And there are these spaces which are coming up, which are meant for people to use. And so bringing nature solutions into those spaces seems almost like a bit contradictory in a sense, or like away from that original thinking. So could you speak a little bit more to that and some examples of that even?
Sure. Traditionally, if you look at cities and you ask an ecologist, they'll say that nature cannot exist in cities because city is all about a built space. Similarly, if you talk to an urban planner also, they'll say that no, this is again a built space, there is no nature in cities. But since the 70s, there's been a greater interest in the field of urban ecology. And more recently, people have been looking at what is called as nature-based solutions. So ideally, if there is an issue of air pollution or solid waste management or water purification that has to be done, we think of building a facility. So if it is water purification, we think of sewage treatment plants that require land, that require investment. Often they are built taking over wetlands of a lake, and then maintaining them is also costly, and you will not find a sewage treatment plant that really works 100% capacity at all time. You need a lot of maintenance. Similarly, our reaction to air pollution will be knee-jerk reactions, like alternate days, or even I saw this in a recent visit to Delhi. I saw this huge water jet that was there in one of the localities. So when the pollution increases, so it's basically when in October, when the pollution becomes very high in the city, they have these huge water jets that just put water into the air to reduce the pollution. Or if you're thinking of flood control, we're thinking of building structures that will actually stop the flow of water without realizing what the ecological landscape of the city is. So in nature-based solutions, what nature-based solutions offers is where you use nature itself as a solution. So to give an example, tree cover. If you're looking at trying to reduce air pollution, if you're also trying to reduce the temperatures, we have scorching temperatures now. There's a very recent report, actually last week, that has come out by the Center for Science and Environment, which talks about the six mega cities, including Bangalore, which are seeing a heat wave. And heat, along with relative humidity, is increasing the risk. But what is it? And our general reaction to heat is, let's put on an AC, let's increase the number of air conditioners. But if you can stop cutting trees, you can automatically increase the green cover, reduce the temperature impact, because in one of our field studies in Bangalore, we have seen that the temperature difference in the afternoon in a stretch of road with trees and without trees was 26 degrees. I'm talking about road surface temperature, the roads we walk on. That's a massive number. So at 12 o'clock, the stretch with trees was 26 degrees lower than the stretch without trees. So you can see if it's a number that really makes us think, it is that. So trees provide those benefits, and it's not a single benefit. They also absorb toxic NOx and SO, sulfur dioxide. They provide the shade and help regulate microclimate. Similarly, if you're looking at water purification, instead of setting up an STV, take the example of Calcutta. The East Kolkata wetlands, which are there to the east of the city, is literally what is cleaning the waste of the city. The entire waste of the city is used. It has a colonial history. The entire waste from the city is taken into these wetlands, and not only that, there's a system of both agriculture and fishing that has been developed there. So it's providing the sewage treatment for the entire city free of cost. It's also providing food for the entire city and beyond the city limits, and it is also providing employment for more than a million or so people, not to mention that homes are used as kitchen gardens. So here you have wetlands, but what do we see wetlands in here as? Wetlands in Bangalore, if you see, have been built over, you have buildings coming up, and that's one of the reasons why flooding happens. So cities, wherever there are natural spaces, Bangalore may have its lakes. Bangalore has a green cover that has been planted very thoughtfully in the 90s by forest officers. Of course, again, there's a colonial history. Calcutta has the East Kolkata wetlands. Delhi has a Yamuna, which doesn't seem to be respected. Bombay has the Sanjay Gandhi National Park. Chennai has the Guinea National Park and other green areas, the Pallikarnai Marsh. These are all actually solutions by themselves. You don't have to invest infrastructure, money, and it's not a purely technological solutions. The problem with the built solutions and technological solutions is they will solve one problem. But if you have a nature-based solution, they solve multiple problems at the same time.
I think that's really beautiful to think about, right? Because the problem itself is complex. So you need a complex solution to attack it rather than trying to come up with sort of one-stop shops for each individual thing, but looking at it more holistically. And also then you also need to keep in mind then a longer timeline, right? Just before this, we were speaking a little bit about smaller spaces versus bigger spaces. And some of the places that you're talking about, like, parks and wetlands, those are large spaces, but you can actually build solutions for small spaces as well. Could you maybe share an example of that as well?
One important thing that we have to remember is we may have to change the way we think of nature. Nature is not something that are these acres of forests that are there in some distant place. Nature is something that we have to begin to realize is around us. There's a tree outside. That is nature. So a single tree, we've done carbon sequestration analysis for trees that were going to be cut, and the amount of carbon stored in a tree is indicative that if the tree wasn't there, then all the vehicular pollution that you're going to be inhaling is going to affect your lungs without that tree. So every single tree that is there in the city has some amount of value. Every small plot of land, empty plot of land, can be used for a variety of reasons. Just it has to be done thoughtfully. You can have half an acre of land, whether government land or public or private land even. You can plant the right kind of species of trees. You can have a small rainwater harvesting pit. Yes, it requires some initial investment, but the long-term benefits will always be worth the effort and the money. And if you're talking about industries or organizations, large organizations, even if there is a small patch of land in a particular industrial area a factory has, that can be converted into a simple biodiversity park, where you can have trees of different canopies that can attract bird life, butterfly life, but also have a garden for foraging, have a little pond. It helps not only the people in the factory have a green space where they can go and kind of look at, other than seeing only the built infrastructure. So it's just that we have to change the way. Bangalore is known for its neighborhood parks. On the way here, I could see so many neighborhood parks that are green. That is nature. That is green space. Okay, it's a little built kind of a thing, but then it is contributing to all what there's another term called as ecosystem services, which is the tangible and intangible benefits that we humans receive from nature. It could be in terms of food, water, raw materials. It could be the recreational aesthetic value. It could be the genetic diversity in terms of biodiversity that is there in nature, and also supporting services, flood control, water purification. So there is so much, and we should stop seeing nature as something that is distant and needs to be spread over thousands of acres.
It's something which is sort of around us, part of us in here. I think in hotels it's really interesting because we try to make, I think more and more so, we try to build hotels that are bringing nature closer to you, and it is very challenging in urban spaces, right? Because you only have so much land, and so you have to build so much, so many rooms and so on. But then how can you bring greenery, bring life, bring this this ecosystem that could benefit your employees and your guests into the hotels in small ways, right? And I think one part of it is what you were saying, right? Is there a way to find nature-based solutions to deal with sort of the larger problems of, like, let's say, cooling or water filtration? But I think some of it is also as simple as picking the right species of plants, or succulents, for instance, which could be air purifying into your guest rooms or into your lobbies or into your restaurants, because that in itself, there are so many benefits, right? Even seeing greenery of any sort, even if it's not all around you, even if you're not sitting in a forest, in a wooded area or whatever, you can still get some benefit from having some of these small things around you. And I think that that's something that we can always consider, more and more in the way that we design our buildings also.
If I can just add to what you said about the plants, this is something that has come up repeatedly where people ask us, you're saying plant trees, have trees. We don't have space in our homes. We don't have space in our apartments. So what kind of trees do you suggest we plant? So we brought out a tree guide for Bangalore specifically, saying if you have this much of land and this much of space, you can plant this kind of tree. It's not that you don't have to plant anything in it. Plus, please don't plant purely ornamental exotic species, not the palms which have no use. And if you can identify species that can provide at least two uses, flowering, maybe fruiting, maybe something you can pluck off, say a fruit, something you just want, sometimes you just want flowering species to the place to look beautiful. But look, if you use our imagination a little bit, we have a lot of in the hospitality sector and even in the IT parks that have come up, one of the biggest issues has been they only plant exotic ornamentals, palm trees, because we are aspiring for the Silicon Valley ideas from the US. You can plant native species, which will be very useful.
No, absolutely. I think, and if you're able to bring them, I think it's about education, right? Like you're saying, you provided a guide which helped people make those decisions. And it sounds like a lot of your work is also around that idea of like, how do you provide information and education? How do you take that data and make it into consumable bits of information that people can then utilize to make better decisions? I think that's where the key is, right? And that's actually the goal of this entire conversation of Tamara Perspectives in general. It's that how do we learn from each other so that we can actually make better decisions, right? So that the information is more available and shared. So one of the things that we're also trying to do at Tamara Perspectives is talk about best practices and benchmarks. And you have a perspective on this, and I'd like to hear more about how you feel about benchmarks, how you feel about providing them, the challenges that you face around it, how you feel that they are sometimes received. Because I think there is, benchmarks do, from an industry perspective, I have always found that benchmarks are extremely important because it drives consensus, it drives people, a community together. It helps them sort of, have a target that they can all move forward towards rather than having sort of one person going this way, one team going that way. It allows us to really focus on one specific aim and get us towards that. So, and we know when we've been successful or we haven't, and we're able to analyze what went into that. But you have a perspective on this, and I would love to hear more about it.
I completely agree that we need benchmarks and we need some kind of a standard. And that way, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals itself, that has been something that has been, countries have been able to come to a consensus. So similarly, organizations too will have. The only thing that we feel is that when we have a benchmark, it provides the goal, but the in-between, how do you get to that goal becomes it becomes a very frustrating exercise because that is not specified and it is difficult to specify because it has to be so context specific. I don't have an expertise in benchmarks. I understand the need and the importance for them, but because it has to be so context specific, maybe a better way of looking at it would be not just to give the benchmark, have the benchmark. For example, if you're thinking of a city, it should have these much of carbon sequestration that is happening, but also have certain steps, large steps that are mentioned to reaching that goal. Carbon sequestration need not be just about planting trees. It should be about reducing some kind of a carbon emission from somewhere else. And one of the complexities is that these goals make us want to, they seem intimidating because you have to change so many processes and things. And the easiest thing then to say is, okay, I can't achieve this and I will leave it aside. But what we say is, at least do those, at least start that process of taking the step. So if you're taking an individual perspective, will my turning off a light have any impact on sustainability? The answer to that is no. Unless and until the largest companies, 15 companies in the world, change their fossil fuel arrangements, we are not going to make a dent. But that doesn't mean I don't turn off the light, because sustainability is also a value system. So even if it doesn't really mean it's not making that kind of an impact, it's still good to do that. So for my house, my benchmarks would be keep the lights off when you're not using it, have CFL lights, maybe go for solar, this thing. So it gives me those manageable steps. And once you've done a few of those steps, it might make you more confident to take some of the larger steps. So with benchmarks, it's the context where my house is not going to be like your house. My income is not going to be like somebody else's income to be able to put in. Maybe some of them can't afford the CFL bulb, but maybe they'd have a better waste management practice. They may not be ordering as much on Amazon. So every step matters. So if we hold somebody to a certain benchmark, then we should also ensure that we provide certain steps and certain encouraging steps to say, okay, you're moving little by little to it, because this is all incremental. Unless, of course, tomorrow everybody, those 15, say, fossil companies, which I will not name, they say that we are going to change our entire fossil fuel policy. That is what will be the tipping point kind of a thing. Suddenly they change. But it'll be difficult.
In an urban context, you're working with so many different stakeholders, right? You have communities, in your case, you're working a lot with students, for instance. You're working also with government agencies. Do you find that there is a sense of collaboration and that there is a sense of sort of movement towards, I know you mentioned that there is hope amongst each of these and you're seeing that there is movement, but do you think that there is anything that could be done to encourage further collaboration amongst these groups so that we can maybe not, do as much as maybe any of those 15 companies, but to kind of push, let's say, this city, Bangalore, which to me is extremely close to my heart, to push us forward in a more positive way?
Always, I would say. See, one thing is that when you teach undergraduate students, you can't afford to be cynical, right? You can't go into class. So we've adopted a very hopeful attitude to this. But our work with different stakeholders, whether it's an NGO, whether it is citizen groups, or whether it is the government, has only shown that collaboration is possible. It's not all a romantic thing. There's going to be a lot of give take. There's going to be a lot of fights and challenges. But if there is any city that is an example of collaboration, it is Bangalore. Because here, if the lakes have been revived, it was also because there were officials in the BBMP who were keen to do it the right way. There were advocacy organizations that took the time and effort to file the cases. There were citizens who came out on the street to fight it. So there's been a lot of it. It takes a lots of work to get to that. But we see that there is a lot of collaboration. And then you might not get that collaboration for everything at all times, but there is, and not all groups will come together for everything because there are going to be differences. But having said that, there is a lot of scope, and we find that engagement has been one of the best ways of doing it. Continuously having conversations. And for us as an academic space, we can be a little more neutral. So that is something that we feel has been an advantage for us.
You can be the facilitator, it sounds like, between these different organizations or systems.
The people and organizations are doing tremendous work here, which we can't do as academics. Being there on the street, fighting these fights, going to the courts, fighting these fights, is not something that we can do. But what we can do is help with the research, help with the public outreach, help with engagement. Where we can, we are always happy to help with that.
So speaking a little bit about, how we can connect nature, bring nature closer to urban spaces, more integrated with urban spaces, how do you feel that we can also encourage people to be more connected to nature within these growing cities? And, how do we build that relationship or make that relationship closer rather than them having to go to faraway places and things like that? So how is it that you think that we can build these relationships?
So nature is something that you need to feel and experience, right? And it's one thing to see it on, say, a National Geographic or a Discovery India, but if someone has to actually connect to nature, they have to have that touch, feel experience. And for that, we have found that the easiest group of people are children, who are also increasingly being disconnected from nature because they don't have that interaction in cities. There's also this phenomenon, just reminder of, called nature deficit disorder, and wherein it is said that children who are growing up in cities or who are getting disconnected from nature have behavioral issues when they're growing up. So nature provides a soothing, calming experience. If you want to relax, you don't go to a mall. You should not be going to a mall because it's just high. you go to a place which gives you some peace and serenity. So if we look at, for children, it becomes even more important to understand what nature is, to touch and feel nature. But what is happening today a lot, the nature that children are seeing in front of them is not really it was a little different before. So what we call the shifting baseline syndrome. A child who sees a degraded lake today doesn't realize that a few years ago, this was a sparkling water body that probably provided livelihoods for the local community. People used it for swimming, fishing. There were cultural experiences around the lakes in Bangalore. What the child sees today is this sewage-ridden, garbage-filled lake with debris. So how do we ensure that that baseline doesn't shift anymore? That the child is connected to nature and it feels that I want to protect this water body. And one of the things that are the climate festivals that we hold, we have seen is that children actually will be more confident and are more eager to take that first step towards protecting nature. They don't have that much inhibitions about it. They're able to see the value of it sometimes much faster than adults, who will argue about the pros and the cons and the trade-offs, etc. So in that sense, we find that to connect nature, to become advocates for nature, or to create an electorate for nature, children are a really good vote bank in that sense for us, because it's elections time.
Idea of memories and nature is something that actually we think about in Tamara pretty often, because so we have resorts which are located in very rich ecosystems, and one of the things that we have found is that when you ask guests much later, years later, after they visited our properties, to think back and what do they remember of their experiences at one of these properties, the first thing that always comes up so strongly is nature, right? And it's interesting because I think that you're right. Like, we are so depleted in the cities. We've kind of forgotten what it's, or we don't get that same sense of calm from the nature that exists around us. This idea of memories and how powerful that can be is something that really strikes me as being very important. And I hope that there is more, there are more efforts, or there's even more documentation of a sense of like the good work that is getting done, right? To see that, advocates have gone out and, saved a line of trees, whatever it is. Like, I really do hope that there is more documentation so that we can remember these sort of successes and what it meant to the community and the people of that place, and how it encouraged or preserved biodiversity in those areas. But thank you so much for your words. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for the work that you do, most importantly. I think that it's incredible that you're sharing these scientific and data-driven analysis and those those learnings with your students and with the world. I really appreciate that. That's the work that you're doing, and I hope that as a city, and of course as a country, we continue to invest in our nature spaces within urban landscapes, and hopefully our children will also have just as many nature experiences within their backyard or wherever around them that they can look towards and have, and I also have deep hope for a greener future. So
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here today.
thank you, Seema.
Thank you.